This podcast is brought to you by Spotify for podcasters. Have you yourself ever wanted to become a podcaster? Well, Spotify makes it simple and easy to do so. You can record, edit, and even distribute your podcast straight from their app. The best part? It is absolutely 100% free. Visit their website, podcasters.spotify.com, for more details, and download the app on your Apple or Android devices today to get started on your podcasting adventure. That's Spotify for podcasters. What's going on, everybody? Long time no see, no hear from yours truly, and I'm sorry if you've been disappointed by the lack of content. My personal life has actually taken a lot of my time, so I haven't really been able to do the podcast. Plus, I've been focusing on some other things that took my attention away from the podcast. So if you've been missing the content, I'm sorry for that, but I'm going to try to be much more regular about this going forward because, my Lord, I feel like over the last couple of months, professional wrestling has gotten me interested and hooked again as if I was a child all over again. As a matter of fact, it's funny that I even say that because just last night, my in-laws essentially had actually watched our little girl. So it was just me and my lady for the night. And we were up till 1 o'clock in the morning playing Super Nintendo. And I do mean like the little itty bitty one that came out a few years back that had 20 some odd preloaded games on there. Yeah, we were playing Super Mario World. And I kept thinking to myself, wow, I'm excited for professional wrestling. I'm up late playing Super Nintendo with my lady. What year is this? You know, it's one of those realization moments that in 2023, I'm doing basically the same things I was doing back in like 1995 to 6, 7, 8, and so on and so forth. So it was pretty funny just to have that realization. But guys, we're back to talk about professional wrestling because, oh my Lord, it seems like so much stuff has gone on since I last have done an episode. We've seen the emergence of the TKO merger take place, where Triple H now has full creative control over the WWE, and I gotta say that even hearkening back to last year when the whole allegations with Vince McMahon came up to begin with, and we really saw SummerSlam be the first real show on the main roster that was Triple H influenced. I've been looking forward to wrestling almost every week, even way back when, even during like the dark period we had where it looked like Vince had gotten back into creative. Overall, WWE has just been firing on all cylinders for the last year and a half. And honestly, on the AEW front, they're not doing too bad themselves. Sorry for the sniffles, guys. If I cough or sniff a little bit, it's just because I have a little bit of congestion, maybe a slight cold, I don't know. But I'm doing fine, so please try to ignore that the best you can. But in general, professional wrestling has just been fun. It's been awesome to just be a fan. And one of the reasons I was gone during this hiatus was because I myself have been working on doing a match and actually have been trying to plan potentially a indie run for the next year. So doing that combined with being a fan and watching the product, my trainer says it's hard to sometimes still remain a fan when you actually get into the business and on the in-ring side especially, and he's not wrong. You view the product a little bit differently, which we'll discuss a little bit about that here in just a little bit. But overall, it just makes me so happy to be a pro wrestling fan. This is the one thing that I have actually been crazy about since I was 6 years old. And I started watching when I was 4. So it feels good to have that hypeness back every week to watch pro wrestling. I watched NXT Deadline this morning. I actually started it last night, but me and my lady, like I said, we had our own little special night. So I went ahead and just reserved that for this morning when I was by myself. And guys, I got to tell you, if you've been hating on NXT, you really, really should tune into it. They are doing great work. Shawn Michaels was a guest on Busted Open Radio, actually, just this past week to promote the Deadline show last night. And I kind of agree with his sentiment that if you are a fan of wrestling, characterization, comedy, whatever you want to call it, every type of genre is almost being merged right into this new NXT. I know the 2.0 really soured people, myself included at the beginning, but ever since they transitioned from the multicolored 2.0 to just being simply NXT with a new evolved white and gold as opposed to black and gold presentation, it seems like they've changed a little bit and for the better. So if you haven't checked out Deadline yet, do yourself a favor to do so. It's a good way to get yourself ready for the upcoming year with NXT. The Iron Survivor stipulation, by the way, I think is one of the most innovative matches that has come up over the last few years. It is so much drama. I was hyped last year for those two matches, and they did not disappoint. Same thing for these two. And by the way, there is a star among stars in NXT, and you'll see it in the Iron Survivor Challenge on the men's side. Trick Williams is got it, and I think we can kind of guess where he and Carmelo Hayes will be heading eventually. But I'm enjoying the ride. They've done a great job with building Trick and Carmelo and really building a lot of characters down in NXT. So give it a try if you haven't in a while. Also, big news that came out just this past, I'd say 2 months ago, it was, I believe, at Bound for Glory, as a matter of fact, for Impact Wrestling, the return of TNA. Yes, they are no longer going to be using the Impact Wrestling banner. They are going back to TNA, and they've already been making huge waves by doing so. There was an announcement earlier this week that they're going to be a part of the Endeavor streaming platform, and I don't mean platform as in Endeavor's got their own platform. TNA is going to have its own streaming platform hosted by Endeavor Streaming, which is the parent company to the TKO brand. So somebody had put out there, wouldn't that be funny if here in the future we see some sort of collaboration between TNA and WWE? While I don't think that's going to happen, at least just yet, I do think it's funny that there is a possibility that we could see something like that in the very near future. But TNA has had Will Ospreay. They've got Kazuchika Okada coming through here in January. Alex Shelley is their champion. The new streaming service that they're going to be providing. TNA coming back to the original 3 letters. Guys, I personally have not watched the last couple weeks of Impact Wrestling, and this may sound a little hypocritical as saying so, but I promise you that they have changed that product around. And if you want a good mix of that same thing that I mentioned with NXT, TNA is your alternative, I believe, to that very same precedent that NXT hosts for WWE. If you've heard me mention this as props to NXT and TNA, but where's the love for AEW? Don't worry, AEW still has its foothold. We'll venture a little bit further into my opinions on AEW momentarily, but they've had a good, successful last couple months too. The Continental Classic has actually been a little bit of fun. The Hangman and Swerve Texas Death Match from Full Gear is insane to watch, even including that one special spot that people still are talking about, what was a month later, and people can't get over it. It kind of bothered me at first, but not in the, oh God, why would they do that? Just more of the, oh wow, they really are going gross routes with this. Okay, let's do it. Great match overall. The MJF storyline with the Devil is somewhat intriguing still. Like, I have my guesses as to who it is, and I think that's what makes it still so good, is that people are trying to figure out exactly who the Devil is and when we're eventually going to see him unmasked, because I do feel like that's around the corner. Some people think it's MJF. I've thought Adam Cole is that guy. There's other people that have not been mentioned, and then there's some people that people don't want to happen. Obviously, some people have caught on that Wardlow is going to be one of the guys. I'm pretty confident to say that that is going to be the case. I think the Kingdom and Roderick Strong are also going to be in it, which is what leads me to believe Adam Cole could be it. MJF still makes a lot of sense, though. Britt Baker has emerged as being a name, which at first doesn't make sense, and maybe it actually has nothing to do with it based on the fact the news reports of fines being sent out by Bryan Danielson, of all people, for, I guess, talking bad about the product has been the news going around. And that's only come to light because of the involvement that we've heard of Danielson when it came towards the firing of CM Punk, which we'll get to CM Punk in a little bit as well. But overall, AEW is still doing its thing. It still has its good fan base. And I really don't think people need to harp on them too much. They are what they are. And honestly, if it's not your brand of wrestling, that's perfectly fine. I can tell you right now, sorry, there was a gnat in front of me there for those of you that are watching YouTube. But overall, AEW still presents a very great alternative product. And on top of that, it's one of those things where it doesn't need to be WWE. It needs to just be its own separate thing. And if WWE is not your flavor, AEW could be that flavor that you actually crave. If AEW isn't it for you, maybe TNA, maybe WWE is more your style. I have come to terms, as I've said on this podcast before, that WWE and its presentation of pro wrestling in the storytelling format is basically what I grew up with, which is why I enjoy it more. AEW has mixtures of that WCW and New Japan-esque elements in there, which I was a huge WCW fan, but WCW also still had its own stories. It wasn't as noticed, if you will. Obviously, with the company being gone now, that's kind of a more of a prominent thought as opposed to anything, with the exception of the disastrous year 2000 of WCW, but we don't have to go into that. Pro wrestling is just fun, and it's been nothing but fun. I said the AEW side of things has been a little bit lack for me, and it's just, again, because of my preference. AEW does its thing where they want more matches, and they want to get headlines based on the matches, not for the stories that they are telling. And I've seen people actually degrade them a little bit, stating that they should be more story focused or there's a lack of character development. And I can kind of understand the argument on the character development side. But when it comes to being more match oriented, that's not a bad thing. You could kind of see that becoming the case over the last year or so. And there is an audience for that. And people want to talk about the audience, the lack there of crowds at certain shows, or, you know, the viewership not growing past a certain point. And I've had to make this argument a couple times to people. Maybe that's not what their intention is. Like, maybe they're not trying to grow their fan base. They know what their fan base is. It's the hardcore fans. It's the New Japan-like fans, which is the way the product's being presented recently. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's an alternative that you can enjoy. There's no reason to hate on them. If it's not your flavor, then you can just move on down the line and pick a new flavor. That's what Baskin-Robbins does with its 31 flavors of ice cream. Wrestling's no different. So I don't think that's necessarily bad, though, that they've had just the same number of audience members or the viewership, whatever you want to call it. The only downside, I think, when it comes to AEW is maybe they should think about running smaller venues, because I will say when you have shots that are so frequent on the hard camera side that have a lot of empty seats, it doesn't look good for your company. That was WWE's biggest problem for years. And I'm talking about as early, or I should say now, as long ago as 2019. If you remember the Stomping Grounds pay-per-view, which was the dumbest name next to Great Balls of Fire for a WWE pay-per-view, they were famously known, I believe it was held in Seattle, where the tickets didn't move very well either, and they basically had to curtain off a full side and move anybody who had purchased tickets on that side over onto the camera side. So it's not like WWE hasn't had these same problems. NXT even had a little bit of an example of that with some shots that apparently had made some rounds. And if that is the case, it's okay. It's okay that it caters only to a certain market. AEW is doing their thing, and as long as their TV deal holders, is I guess the right word, is happy with their product, as long as the people involved in AEW are happy with their product, then there's no reason to panic, and there's no reason to jump on them. And there's also no reason, by the way, for all this tribalism that goes on in professional wrestling. I see it so much on X, formerly known as Twitter, which is becoming fun to say. I see it on Facebook. I see it in general with the IWC, that it's almost like you have to hate one in order to enjoy the other. Why? They both are professional wrestling organizations. And if you are one of those people that is rooting for a company to fail, whether it's AEW, WWE, New Japan, whatever the case, if you're wishing that, then I really actually question your fandom for professional wrestling. Because if one company's doing good, that means all the other companies are doing good. What's that old saying? A high tide raises all ships, I believe is the saying. So yeah, there's no reason to hate on one company just because you like the other. There's so many different options of wrestling, and there's so much to watch of professional wrestling these days that you can find something that actually hits your bones the way you want it to. For some, it is AEW. For me, as I have mentioned a few moments ago and several other times, WWE has been hitting on all cylinders. They are in a wonderful stride. And I want to talk about that right now. The return of CM Punk has been almost like the cherry on top of this ice cream that has been presented in front of me at this moment in time. Because you look over the last couple of years, as a matter of fact, we'll even make it more simple. Go back to what I said, the SummerSlam, the year and a half ago where we saw Triple H take over power. Maybe you could even argue since Cody Rhodes came back at WrestleMania 22, or excuse me, at WrestleMania 38, back in 2022. There we go. You could probably argue even then. Cody has become the new face. He is John Cena of this generation. And if you don't believe that, you really need to go and do more research on that. But he's not the only guy that's helping steer the course of this ship, which is amazing that WWE, who has always had problems making baby faces and more importantly, keeping more than one as a focal point, you have so many right now that you actually can get behind. And it doesn't even matter if one doesn't suit you, there's another one right behind them. Whether it's Cody Rhodes, whether it's LA Knight, whether it's Jey Uso, Sami Zayn. It's still up in the air as to whether or not he's a heel or a face right now, but I think we can go ahead and categorize him as a babyface. Veterans like CM Punk are back. Randy Orton just came back. There is a plethora of baby faces that are helping steer the course of WWE, and they're not lacking on the heel side either, as you still have the Bloodline, including Roman Reigns. You've got the Judgment Day. Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, I promise you that team has been making waves, and they are someone to be focused on, especially Grayson Waller in the future. I promise that guy's going to have a huge career going forward once he breaks off and does his own thing and gets that traction for himself. I just can't gush over enough of how WWE has been doing things so well. Drew McIntyre, who just recently turned heel, and his heel is a logical term heel. Like, it's not something that you didn't see coming, nor is he necessarily wrong in some of his gripes. So this is definitely just showing how Triple H's influence is being felt in creative as well as the overall product of the WWE. And man, CM Punk coming back. Who would have called that? I didn't. I'll tell you right now. I honestly thought AEW was going to be AEW or bust from Punk, and we know how that ended. And by the way, speaking of the Bryan Danielson AEW situation involving Punk and him being let go with Danielson being made as the guy who made that decision, I don't believe that at all. I think he may have had a hand to deal with, which I believe he's admitted towards, but I don't think he made that final call. And if anything, it should have been the boss, Tony Khan, that made that call if it didn't. If he didn't, I truly question his leadership skills, but I don't think that Danielson is the one to point fingers at. And honestly, I think it may have been for the better anyway, because CM Punk being in WWE really does just feel right. I can't express it in any other form or fashion other than it really has just felt like, hey, he fits here, you know? And I honestly love what's going on. All of the potentials that we have right now with Punk being back is insane. We've already alluded to him and Roman Reigns is going to happen at some point. There's rumors that have already suggested that that is going to be the eventual goal, where we'll see the tribal chief actually go back to being the face that we all knew he could become, especially after the success of his tribal chief gimmick. Seth Rollins is looming. We know that's coming. I don't know who his first feud is going to be against, but there's just a plethora of guys. Kevin Owens is one. Cody Rhodes is another. We saw their little interaction on SmackDown. We know the Rumble's right around the corner, and he is a slot-in favorite to do the one thing, as he mentioned on SmackDown, that he came to finish his story as well, which is main eventing WrestleMania. And with it being a two-night WrestleMania now, it is not out of the question that we see Punk in one of those main event slots. And against Seth Rollins, I think is ideally what everybody is looking for. And it's funny that the whole finish the story narrative was started by Cody, but right now there are so many guys that you can put that with. But yes, the main two of focus have been Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. And I am so looking forward to this road to WrestleMania coming up to Philadelphia and WrestleMania 40, which is got the potential. I agree with the guys also that stated this on Busted Open Radio. I believe Bully was the one that said it. And if not, Dave LaGreca, I think you were the one to say it. But between the two of them, one of them mentioned it, and I fully believe it, that this upcoming WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia, does have the potential, with the roster that we have, the stories that we have ongoing currently, and the prospects that could be seen with both nights of WrestleMania. This one does have the potential to be better than WrestleMania 17, which is looked at as being the greatest WrestleMania of all time. I think 39 came really close, but it was that ending on night 2 that I think is what shot it back down. Night 1 was phenomenal. Night 2 wasn't so much. But with 40 looming in Philly, I do believe there is true potential to become the greatest WrestleMania of all time. Guys, that is actually all I got to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed this comeback episode. And let me know, who would you want to see CM Punk face off with at WrestleMania? And more importantly, who would you like to see his return feud or match be with? Shout out in those comment sections down below. And if you're new to the channel and you like what you heard, please give us a subscribe on YouTube. You can also listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. We really appreciate the support. The subscriptions really go a long way to help us with the channel. And as always, you can like us over on Twitter and Facebook. You can follow me over on formerly Twitter. I should have said X, but there you go. We're also on Instagram. Follow us there as well. And if you like this, I think I could always come back next week and do another episode. This has been kind of fun shooting the breeze about wrestling again. So I appreciate all you that stuck around and were patient with me. And also, if you'd like to see some video footage of my in-ring training and the looming debut that I'm working towards next year in 2024, why don't you let me know in those comments down below, and I just might post that for content. Maybe even do some more call-alongs. You guys let me know what you want to hear. Interviews can also come back as well. So much that we can do. Guys, thank you so much for your time, and always continue to love pro wrestling.